Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the Late Show. This is your host, Young Brando, live from Los Angeles. I'm very happy to welcome you to another night of auction previews. I'm going to look at Christie's Hong Kong, the important watches auction that is going to take place on the 26th, 27th, and 28th of this month. Maybe I was thinking we will look at a few results from this week's auctions from Geneva, especially the Art of F.P. Journe, which I covered in the form of a preview, might be interesting. So feel free to vote in the poll. Feel free to express your opinion. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to send them in. Earlier today, I had a great conversation with Robert Ponkenhofer about the emergent Austrian independent brands Karl Suchi und Söhne. This is a brand that has a long history that extends back 2 centuries, but it has been recently revived about 6 years ago and is entering the sports chic segment with their Belvedere with quite a bang. So I wanted to give them a little bit of coverage. I wanted to have their CEO present the brand for us. It's an hour-long conversation. We touch on a lot of things about the brand's history and the unique perspective that it brings to the world of watches today. I think they present an interesting proposition, certainly deserve a second or third look. Please do check out their website, karlsuchi.com. They have some interesting models. If you need more information, feel free to contact them directly. They are very responsive. They are very attentive. They are very friendly. But you can always feel free to contact me as well, and I would be happy to put you in touch because they also offer a lot of interesting customization and personalization options. So do let me know what you think. And I also wanted to share with you a couple of things that I posted earlier on Instagram. Hey, thank you. I love Maldives. Thanks for sending this in on Instagram. And this will be a great way to compare, how things have gone. Because, okay, maybe let's start with that, because I was gonna just talk a little bit about the Breguet 2 movement pocket watch, which is, of course, the ancestor to what has become an iconic model for F.P. Journe and what has certainly become one of the most desirable watches on the planet, with one of the most hyped brands makers on the planet. But let's check this out. So I'll actually start with the recent result, and we will work our way back in. I Heart Maldives just sent me the result from 2016 at Christie's Hong Kong for the Jade Dial F.P. Journe Tourbillon Souverain. And you will see that it has basically increased tenfold. So earlier today, one of the hottest results in the Art of F.P. Journe auction was this tourbillon souverain in platinum with the rare jade dial. The piece itself is from 2018, is built on the tourbillon nouveau caliber, number 754TN. And comes also with the very desirable and hefty and expensive platinum bracelet. So matching bracelet. Earlier today, this piece sold for 1,134,000 in Swiss francs, which with the buyer's premium actually is already more than 1.4 million in Swiss francs. Good evening, Chris. How are you doing? Oh, thank you, I Heart Maldives. Thank you for this generous contribution. Thank you for this generous PayPal donation. I do appreciate it. So we are indeed covering the Art of F.P. Journe auction, and we started with one of the hottest watches that's sold today, that went under the hammer and realized a final price in excess of $1.4 million in a million Swiss francs, which of course is more than 1.5 million USD. Right? Yes. In fact, it's 1.5 more so. Oh, 113 is including the premium. Okay. All right. That's good. All right. Still, that's broke the ceiling of the estimates. Realize the price that's more than 1.1 million in Swiss francs, which actually equals more than 1.26 in US dollars. That was 2028. The Tourbillon Souverain in platinum on the matching 5-row bracelet with the rare jade dial. Now we're going back in time to 2016 for a similar piece, right? Itself manufactured in 2015. Earlier case number, still with the Tourbillon Nouveau movement, with that exquisite jade dial. And again, on the matching platinum bracelets. That one sold for 1,187,500 in Hong Kong dollars. Which was a little bit more than 150,000. Sorry, Jesus. Yeah, that was a little more than 150,000 in US dollars. It's fascinating. That was November 28th, 2016. And now on May 12th, 2023, we have basically this watch having grown tenfold in terms of its market value. And it rings in a very interesting way. I was just watching earlier today as I was preparing for this live stream, one of the more recent parts of the interview series that François-Paul Journe did with Waco of the Revolution magazine and the Rake. And he was talking there about the increasing interest in his watches. And he was just extremely transparent, self-confident, and honest. He simply said, I have a lot of new customers who are coming in with this investor mindset, who want to acquire one of my watches or more because they have checked these charts they have seen on social media. They have looked them up on Chrono24 and realized that they are selling above retail. But I still have a very important core of customers who are serious collectors, who have been with me for decades, and who are actually interested in horology. And I like that balance that he struck, because he is someone who is very much aware and very much confident in his own horological genius, very self-content. He knows the inherent horological value of his watches, but he's not naive in thinking what actually drives these prices, which is, of course, something that at this point almost works independently of the market. And that's something that really solidifies the kind of honor he was granted by Christie's. Christie's never organized for watches an auction like this, an event of this magnitude for a living watchmaker. Of course, these kinds of auctions have happened for Breguet in the past, right? There's the famous Art of Breguet auction by Antiquorum. There have been so many auctions made for Patek on important anniversaries by Antiquorum in 1989 and more. And these companies are still extant, but none of them qualify as living watchmakers by any stretch of imagination. Whereas with François-Paul Journe, you have a living watchmaker who still represents the brand and not merely as a figurehead. He's still very much the mastermind. Of course, he doesn't actually make even a small portion of the watches. He was talking about the new FFP, that's one that expresses hours with a single hand, that he did with Francis Ford Coppola. And apparently he made the first 5 watches of the series himself, because up until that moment, he wasn't able to train any of his watchmakers to accomplish that particular watch. But from the 6th example onwards, from now on, he's working on something else, right? I think he's actually working on a different kind of escapement now, that he wants to use across the entire line. And that probably will be his most important project in quite some time. Huh. Well, that's it, Chris. That's what I tried to explain with my friends. I love Maldives' urging and his kind encouragement. Um, it's important to note, right? And I think, look, certain things need to align. If you ask me, I always, there are a lot of people who ask me for free advice on different social media platforms and in real life too. The minute they figure out that I'm a watch guy, if I happen to tell them that I have a YouTube channel or whatever, that's the first question. What's the watch to invest in? Um, First of all, and with all due respect, I think it's a stupid question, right? If I know exactly which watches to invest in and you are giving me three, the budget is usually something like three and a half or $5,000, I would just I would just buy 2 dozens and sit on them myself, right? Does it say stupid here that I'm going to just dole out free advice for that kind of investment? um, that doesn't make sense, right? But most important thing is people who have made most money in watches as collectors, right? All these super collectors and mega dealers that people look up to. You can mention names like John Goldberger. You can mention names like Alfredo Paramico. You can mention the names of dealers like Davide Parmigiani. All of these names, especially the collectors like Goldberger and Paramico, if they ended up making money on watches, it was not their primary intention. They have not gone in to watches to make money. They went through um, so many different watches. They went out and acquired watches from different brands, watches that they liked, right? Chasing after certain models with a burning passion all over the world. Goldberger used to come to the US, almost 5 decades ago. He has been coming from Italy to this continent to hunt for watches for half a century by now. So ultimately, the long and short of it is you buy what you like, buy with your budget, within your budget, buy watches with the money that you have, learn as much as you can so you know whether the watch you are buying is just to satisfy your own ego, just to match your own aspirations, or does it also have some inherent horological value in it? Does it also have, in addition to your burning passion for the watch, a certain uniqueness, a rarity, a point of distinction that separates it from the rest of the market? If you can check at least two of these boxes, do I love it? Is it horologically significant? Is it rare and limited in any way? We can add to this, is it relative to its horological and historical significance trending at a level which is undervalued? If you can check out of these four boxes two or more, you're set. Your money will be safe. Investments, double, triple, quadruple, no one can know about that because that's not even internally dictated from within the world of horology. right? No one quite knew about the situation that we had with Coco 19, right? No one knew that, we would come on the brink of a war that can embroil the entire region, if not beyond. In 2008, no one quite knew ahead of time, even though, there were movies made after it about this in particular, like The Big Short, but no one significant really sounded the alarm, and no one in the mainstream listened, with years and years to go until the housing market crashed. No one knew, and no one can. But what happened with F.P. Journe? Already when he was just establishing his brand, already when he was taking subscriptions for the one of the earliest versions of this watch that you're looking at, the Tourbillon Souverain, a lot of the significant collectors were already lining up to acquire one of his watches. So that's the kind of thing you should be looking for, right? If you genuinely have a kind of budget for your watches where the money is no object, you look at the young watchmakers whose watches are on the radar of some of the most prominent collectors. Because those prominent collectors, one, have social media platforms where they become tastemakers in their own rights. But more importantly, still to this day, have a certain authority where their word of mouth, where the judgment that comes out of their mouth is respected already by at least half a dozen people. So when a new brand comes, like the Simon Brett, for example, the first 2-3 runs are almost immediately sold out, right? When Peterman Beda makes an entry with their time only and chronograph watch, it's almost impossible to get, even though it's quite expensive, as their split second chronograph is basically just as expensive as Patek. Right? When Chef de Recepi comes onto the scene, already having his older brother as an established watchmaker who has 2 grand prizes under his belt, people go after it. So it's not rocket science on the one hand, but it's also not something that you want to just gamble. That's why platforms like mine, sorry to be so vain, and sorry to pat myself on the back, are very important, because I'm trying to share with you the actual substance, the knowledge that distinguishes these watches. And the only point of data that you can have about the future is by studying the past. We can't divine into the future of brands, but if you track the fate of brands like F.P. Journe, the fate of Kari Voutilainen, the fate of Philippe Dufort, you will always see a similar kind of story. So it's important to take certain kinds of lessons from the past. It's not just about getting high on the pleasure of vintage watches. They actually revealed, by the way, in in the run-up to the auction, they actually revealed a lot 0. This wasn't something they advertised in the beginning, but there is a pencil drawing, actually, of the Tourbillon Souverain Souscription number 2 that they sold in this same auction. It is made by an artist with the name Tamas Feha, and it's kind of a primal scene. I mean, my mind is always in the gutter, so you can practically imagine what I'm seeing here, but it doesn't. An F.P. Journe watch doesn't have to come out of someone's vulva to be so attractive and so charming, and you don't necessarily want to adopt it as your own baby. But Patek made a whole bank with the whole slogan, right? You don't own a Patek Philippe, you just take care of it for the next generation. um, I guess this is kind of like adopt, don't shop for F.P. Journe, where you will receive subscription F.P. Journe watch out of the Holy of All Holies. This was lot 2000, or lot number 0, that actually sold earlier today. A pencil drawing by Tamas Feha of the Tourbillon Souverain subscription number 2 that was sold earlier today in the same auction, and it realized a final hammer price of $18,226. Hey, JJ. Thanks for being here earlier today, JJ. It was great to have you as part of the conversation. It's great to have you in the audience as always. Lot 2001 was actually a wall clock that was very faithfully reproduced, but rather than 38 or 40 mm, it was actually 41 centimeter in diameter, coming as close to chronomètre Souverain as it can. Of course, it's a wall clock and it operates on a quartz movement, but aesthetically, it's very fascinating. 41 centimeters in diameter, a quite interesting piece in stainless steel. This was lot 2001, and it sold for $30,844. Lot number 2 was an F.P. Journe Octa Sport in titanium, with the caliber 1303. This, as you know, is a model that combines very interestingly aluminum and titanium. The Line Sport collection is quite inventive, quite innovative, if not as aesthetically pleasing from my taste, of course. This piece sold for 50,400 in Swiss francs, which actually is in excess of 56,000 in US dollars. But as you can see, of the lots that we have looked over so far, this is the first one that actually fell right in the middle of the estimates. The others were well over so far. Just like this, for example, lot number 3, which is the titanium version of F.P. Journe's Centigraph as part of the Line Sport collection. In titanium with the aluminum movement. This was the chronograph that that François-Paul Journe designed after talking with Jean Todt. So it was a piece that he wanted to design from scratch as a racing chronograph. It has a 10-minute counter at 6 o'clock. It has a register that is graduated to 100th of a second with the hand making one rotation across the register every second. And then it has also a 20-second register at 3 o'clock as well. All of these functions combined, it makes it technically possible, this chronograph, the centigraph, makes it possible to time an object moving at 360,000 kilometers per hour, which is actually 1/3000th of the speed of light. So very technically impressive. I like the kind of semi-open worked details, which is achieved by having these sapphire portholes in each of the chronograph registers. I think chronographs are usually one of the most interesting calibers to observe in this manner, whether it is actually an open work dial or simply an exhibition caseback where you just get to fuck around when you're not wearing the piece. And let's be honest, right? Most of us don't use chronographs to time lapse, on the racing track. So a lot of times it's just about, geeking out, fidgeting, and playing with the different functions. Unless, of course, you are in the serious business, like my friend Aussie expats, of cooking for the family. You want to time, you're a good father and you want to time the eggs properly in the morning. You are cooking a nice dinner for your wife and the kids, and you want to get everything just right. Then you have a great use of the chronograph there. But joking aside, it's pieces like this, not necessarily the Line Sport version, not necessarily the titanium and aluminum version, and I think the results of the auction testify to it as much. But this idea that François-Paul Journe takes something that is completely in the pocket of traditional horology, but represents it, finds a way of repackaging it that is very contemporary, that is very innovative, that is somewhat even theatrical. I mean, at the end of the day, beyond its specific functions, the centigraph is basically the aesthetic of a monopusher chronograph adapted to a contemporary aesthetic. I mean, let me see the centigraph, that octa centigraph they had in this auction. I know I skipped one, but I want to I want to find one that is okay. Maybe I do need to go back to that pink gold one. I mean, this is basically a beautiful pink on pink monopusher chronograph looked from one particular kind of perspective, because he has a single pusher there, which is like a slider, which you rock back and forth, start, stop, reset. But he has an aesthetic that both keeps the design language largely in the realm of traditional horology, even as he introduces elements of a certain kind of retrofuturism, right? You have basically a monopusher chronograph designed with a view of Formula One racing. Simple, but it makes all the difference. Like the Lot 17, which is the Centigraphe Souverain in 18 karat pink gold with a salmon dial, with a pink dial, which realized a final hammer price of almost 225,000 in US dollars. Hey, Pauli, nice to see you, man. And also, you know, the details matter too. And that's something that Francois-Paul Journe discovered very early on. I just wanted to stay with that picture for a little bit. Now, because of exotic materials and the import regulations, they don't use the um, stock Journe straps, but you know, everything breathes luxury when it comes to these watches. Since 2006, the movements are fashioned in 18 karat pink gold to even encourage the customer to go for something that is traditionally more luxurious, but also more discreet, to go for platinum. The surcharge between pink gold and platinum is almost minimal. And then since 2006, they have movements that are entirely fashioned out of 18 karat pink gold as well, with these bridge plates, as you can see. And usually the stock straps are basically alligator inside and out, right? With larger square scales on the outside and with smaller round scales on the inside used as lining. So the presentation is very important. I have also mentioned to you before, and I think, you know, this is the case with many of the F.P. Journe boutiques worldwide. But the space they have, I haven't been to the one in Miami, and I haven't been to the new one in New York. But the one they have in Los Angeles or the one they have in Paris, I mean, these are incredible places. Like there is actual architectural thinking that goes behind the making of an F.P. Journe boutique. So they know how to present their watches. I've never seen as much natural light in a watch related space as I have in the Los Angeles boutique of F.P. Journe. It's unique. And all of these details matter. And finally, they add up to something. Lot number 4 was a titanium limited edition line sport octa model with a blue dial. This was made only in a limited run of 8 pieces. It was the first one with the blue dial open, offered at a public auction. And again, this is a great example too. Look, again, I'm not a big fan of the line sport designs, but it's not just another case material with the same movement slapped into it, right? It's a different case design. The materials that are used are different, and it's not only for the case. It's inside and out, right? The movements here are fashioned out of aluminum, if only to emphasize, if only to intensify the difference between one line and another. Again, having clear cuts, distinctions between your different products, right? Knowing exactly why a particular kind of watch exists in your product line, these are all important. And, when everything works, you might just take it for granted, but don't for a minute think that every single watch brand out there has that sort of holistic vision where they actually know what they're doing. F.P. Journe seems to know what they're doing, and it works. This was lot number 4 for a limited edition, one of 8 titanium line sports with the big date power reserve indicator, as well as the day and night indicator, titanium on titanium bracelet with an aluminum movement. The piece actually sold earlier today for more than 110,000 in US dollars. This is another thing, another important thing that François-Paul Journe does. Um, he actually gives perks to his loyal collectors, right? For example, the Black Label series, right? You only get allocations for Black Label watches. You only get allocations for Black Dial F.P. Journe pieces only after you already have acquired a piece, right? So these are for F.P. Journe collectors who are part of a group, right? Who are joining a club. Uh, they are the masters of organizing very special events, from cocktail parties, holiday parties, to watchmaking classes, wine tasting, etc. But they also give you perks in acquiring watches that are not immediately available, not available at retail to the average collector. And once again, that's important. It's important to make people feel important, make collectors feel special by giving them something substantive, not just a catalog, not just a polishing cloth, not just a set of gloves or a loop, but an actual watch that is basically made with them in mind. And whether it's urban legend or not, At least the story goes that these black label watches are actually inspected by Francois Paul Journe before they leave the manufacturer. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if it's just a myth, but it only goes to emphasize the extra care and attention that is given to the customer by giving them exclusive access to certain kinds of pieces. Lot number 5 was a F.P. Journe chronomètre Souverain black label with the black lacquered dial in 38 millimeters. In platinum, which I think is a beautiful watch. This piece sold for above the upper ceiling of the estimate as well, and finally realized in excess of an amount in excess of 140,000 in US dollars. Another example of the black label. This is the Quintième Perpétuel black label. It's a self-winding perpetual calendar with the leap year indicated discreetly under the hand stack by a micro hand, a big date, a two guichet style big date indicator at 6 o'clock, a power reserve indicator at 9, and the two aperture for day of the week and the month right at 12 o'clock as well. I like this 4-leaf clover kind of opening that you have at the center of the dial with the hour track bolted onto it, drilled through it, and of course the railroad track for the minutes at the perimeter of the dial. The 18 carats gold bridge plates matched with the 22 carats guilloche decorated off-center winding rotor. A very distinctive look, framed by the platinum case. This is lot number 6, Octa self-winding perpetual calendar from the Black Label series, which sold for an amount in excess of 140,000 in US dollars. If you would like to jump on and talk about F.P. Journe watches and the results from the earlier auction today, feel free to do that. I'm actually going to pin that. Lot number 7 was yet another Black Label series watch. This is a model that they used to call Octa Calendrier, It is François-Paul Journe's approach to the annual calendar complication, which, unlike a triple calendar, some of which need adjustment at the end of every month, others need an adjustment at least 5 times a year. Annual calendars need a single adjustment at the end of the short month, at the end of February, on a yearly basis. But other than that, your watch gets the time, of course, but also the date, the day, and the month right for the rest of the year. Here, the piece is presented with a black dial, again, unique for this particular collection. The date hand is actually retrograde, so it advances downwards. And at the end of the month, it actually snaps back, snaps right up to this point of the crescent, the somewhat asymmetrical crescent, which is facing the direction of the crown. And the day of the week, as well as the month, is indicated through the cutouts, through the aperture that flank the signature of the brand. And you have that off-center dial that is bolted on by the side of the crown as well. Lot number 7 is an Octa Calendrier black label annual calendar with the retrograde hand, self-winding movement, in a platinum case with the black dial. This lot sold for more than 224,000 in US dollars. Lot number 8 was perhaps one of the highlights of the auction. I have talked about the story of these watches, the story of the vagabondage on this channel, but I'm going to rehearse a couple of important points. As you probably know, as loyal members of the audience, François-Paul Journe was doing a lot of work in the mid to late 90s for other brands, but especially Cartier. You remember, of course, his collaboration with Denis Flageolet as 2/3 of THA in realizing the monopusher chronograph for Cartier as part of their CP collection. Apparently, he was also working for them on a jump hour piece, which Cartier later ended up scrapping, which they didn't want to use. So François Paul decided to chuck away the prototype and didn't think about it for a while, except the famous Osvaldo Patrizzi knocked on his door with only 6 months to go for the 30th anniversary celebration of Antiquorum. He needed a special watch. He wanted F.P. Journe to make him something special. Of course, there wasn't enough time to design something from scratch, but he did remember that he had this piece that became the Vagabondage in some drawer. So he showed Osvaldo Patrizzi the prototype. He loved it. François-Paul Journe made one, 3 pieces, one for each decade, which were sold in that auction, and the collectors asked more, so it ended up being a 69-piece series. Ultimately, it led to Vagabondage 2, which then led to Vagabondage 3. And of course, from the Vagabondage, things get exponentially more complicated. From being a jump hour piece, it becomes a piece that expresses both the hours and minutes digitally. So jump hour and jump minutes. And then by Vagabondage 3, we actually have the seconds digitally expressed. So this is actually the seconds register here, which of course clicks every second. And these are enormously power hungry complications. Anything that requires this sort of digital expression and jumping hours, minutes, or seconds really eats up the energy. So it is extremely important in this case to design movements which actually can work with consistency, can provide a certain kind of accuracy. And with the Vagabondage 3, there is actually a remontoir d'égalité that ensures that, right? In fact, the train for the seconds is operated by that 1 second remontoir, right, which releases the bursts of energy each second so that the force remains consistent. Anyway, all of this being said, this was actually a box set that included one of each generation, a Vagabondage 1, a Vagabondage 2, and a Vagabondage 3, all in platinum and all with the same number 47. The reason that these are in these kinds of tonneau-shaped cases, in a case shape that is reminiscent of the Cartier Tortue, is exactly for the reason that I just disclosed, because the origins of, the original Vagabondage lie in a project that was first commissioned from François-Paul Journe for Cartier, but which Cartier later scrapped, and who's laughing now. And this triptyque, which again is a 3-piece series of platinum examples that all carry the same serial number, number 47, just sold earlier today as Lot 8 on the Art of F.P. Journe auction that was organized by Christie's Geneva. And it actually sold for almost 870,000 in US dollars. That was lot number 8 for the 3-piece set for F.P. Journe Vagabondage in platinum, which sold for almost 870,000 in US dollars. Number 9 is an Octa Réserve de Marche from the first generation, from year 2001, which incidentally means that it has rhodium plated brass movement, as you can see, which is matched for this self-winding piece for this caliber 1300 with a 22 carats full gold rotor with the guilloche decoration that is placed off center. This piece that is in pink gold with a gold dial, a big date indicator at around 10 o'clock, and a power reserve indicator at 8 o'clock in a 38 millimeter pink gold case, sold for more than 105,000 in US dollars at lot number 9. The story of brass movements is very simple too, and I think again points to two important things that François-Paul Journe did there. One, again, he captured the imagination of some of the collectors by presenting them that kind of luxury, right? I now have a watch that is not only encased in precious metal, but that is largely fashioned out of noble metals, right? Even the bridge plates of my movement, even most of my movement is made out of precious metal. That's an important statement, no matter what you make of it, right? You might leave nonplussed, you might be unimpressed by it. That still doesn't erase the connotation that it was an incredible move for marketing. But the other important thing he did was, and this is something that goes with every single move that he made, once F.P. Journe leaves something behind, they don't go back to it. So if brass movements are gone, unless there's a very important, historically significant, or technically relevant reason to use them in this or that limited edition model, they're not coming back. So that particular attitude, again, makes sense for F.P. Journe in two ways. One, it protects the loyal collector, right, who has been with the brand for decades and whose purchase that was made all the way back when is protected in this way, in terms of its value, in terms of its uniqueness, in terms of its rarity. Whether that person holds on to it or not, that's of course not the brand's responsibility. And then the second part, of course, is about living up to that motto that is actually inscribed on each watch, right? Invenit et fecit. So you constantly have to invent something, right? You have to make sure that you don't stand still. And the man still works. He still likes to work. He's still on his feet. He's still thinking. He's still trying to invent something forward. Still add some value to his watches, which is commendable. And again, I'm saying all of this without without really having a fraction of the passion that a lot of people have for François-Paul Journe and F.P. Journe as a watchmaker. I mean, I really appreciate and admire him, but this brand has never been one of my personal favorites, even though I've always appreciated the passion of its collectors, even though on a couple of occasions I have benefited in now a distant past from Laurent Journe's hospitality, but that was already ages ago. This is lot number 10. And again, it is one of the examples of what I just mentioned, right? Something that François-Paul Journe left behind and is not going back to. This is the Octa chronograph, which is a much more traditionally designed, much more conservatively executed piece when you compare it to the centigraph. It is essentially, pardon me, a self-winding chronograph, with a big date indicator and a 60-minute totalizer. And in so many ways, it's as with many other watches, the aesthetic reminds me of some of the unusual and complicated pocket watches that Breguet produced and that George Daniels wrote about in his book, The Art of Breguet. So I really like the design of this watch. I think it has to be one of my all-time favorite models by F.P. Journe. This particular example is offered in a 38 millimeter pink gold case. It is actually a very rare model, one of only 8 in this configuration, which is a 38 millimeter pink gold case, pink gold movement, and a gray dial that is fashioned out of white gold. And this is actually a flyback chronograph. So in fact, you don't have to do the start stop reset thing to start timing another event in the sequence. You can start, register the time, and immediately press the resets. Both the chronograph seconds and the minute totalizer will snap back to 0 and start operating right away, which is a function that I really like and really enjoy playing around with my Breguet Type 20, which is what I should wear tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it already. This is what you see on the back. Caliber 1302, matched with a 22 karat rotor weight, which is placed off center. A very elegant watch. Again, one of the most beautiful asymmetric dials that I have seen. And I like that discrete element also that has these bolted on aspects. This is lot 10, the 18 karat pink gold 38 millimeter self-winding flyback chronograph with in a configuration and in a model that is simply not produced anymore. And this particular piece sold for almost 190,000 in US dollars. At 2011, lot number 11, we have a chronomètre à résonance from 2008. This is a piece in a 40 millimeter 18 karat pink gold case with the RN movements, with the newer resonance movements after the earlier versions were retired. Of course, now the movement is renewed once more. And this is a piece that is, of course, heavily inspired by some of the unusual pieces that Emmanuel Breguet, sorry, Emmanuel is the current heir, Abraham Louis Breguet built in the past. Thank you also, I heart Maldives. I love Maldives for the message you shared. Yes, I think actually let's just read that particular auction results that Christie's watches covered. This is that famous number 2 Tourbillon Souverain subscription that was sold today. This is how Christie's describes the results. The first ever dedicated auction for a living independent watchmaker, the Art of F.P. Journe, was 100% sold at Christie's Geneva today. All the watches were sold, realizing more than $14 million, or approximately 350,000 Swiss francs per watch. That is almost 390,000 in US dollars. Clients from 20 countries across 4 continents participated in the sale. Europe and the Middle East represented 50% of the buying, the Americas 28%, and Asia Pacific 20%, while 29% of all buyers and bidders were millennials. That is a very interesting distribution, right? I know F.P. Journe has a very loyal base of European collectors, but suffice to say that Europe and the Middle East is grouped together. So 52% really dwarfs Americas and also goes beyond Asia Pacific as well, which is, I think, the only surprising part of that particular result. But it's very stunning, right? You know, that almost 30% of all buyers and bidders in this auction were millennials. So, in fact, it is a trend for F.P. Journe watches. Of course, not rain or shine, right? We never know what the economic situation will be. But, a third basically of the collector base who participated in this particular auction is quite young, is quite youthful, and possibly has decades of collecting experience ahead of them. So that can only be good for the value of this brand, for the equity that these people are bringing onto the brand. Good. Mm. The top selling model is the one photographed here and is the one of which a pencil drawing was made and sold at this auction, depicting that primal scene by Tamas Feha. Number 2, Tourbillon Souverain Souscription, made around 1999, which sold for more than $3 million. This was the result of the total results and some interesting information from the Art of F.P. Journe auction from earlier today in Geneva. Of course, in Geneva, it's already tomorrow, but it's still May 12th for us. Coming back to this 2008 version of the chronomètre à résonance, which is in a 40 millimeter 18 karat pink gold case at lot 11. It sold for more than $250,000. Pardon me. Lot 12 was really unique as well. This is a tourbillon souverain with the remontoir d'égalité and deadbeat seconds. I think it's really striking the way F.P. Journe presents his tourbillon watches in a way where the tourbillon carriage is symmetrically placed next to the off-center dial, and in a way they are given equal emphasis. I found that always extremely striking, and one of the great ways of both respecting and renewing that tradition that he inherits from Breguet, Daniels, and others. This particular example has an hand-engraved dial fashioned out of white gold and decorated with this unique Regency motif. In this case, I think the rarity of this execution consists in matching pink gold with a white gold dial. Very beautiful. I mean, look, hand finishing and hand engraving and dials made out of actual gold blanks, guilloche decorated by hand-guided rose engines. It makes such a difference, you know, even in these kinds of photographs. But when you inspect these watches, you know, in naked eye, to say nothing of looking at them through a loop, it's really quite an experience. It really elevates the idea that this is just a little mechanism, right? It really breathes some life into the whole affair. This is lot 12, a very rare version of the tourbillon souverain in 40 millimeter 18 karat pink gold case and an hand engraved white gold dial. This particular edition of the second generation tourbillon souverain was made in a run of only 18 pieces, the Régence Circulaire with the Regency dial. Up to 10 pieces were made with a pink gold case that was matched with a hand-engraved white gold dial. The rest were made with matching dials, so pink on pink. This is, which makes this particular watch one of 10. And at the final hammer, the price that was realized for this watch was more than $500,000, $504,730 roundabout. Lot number 13 is the number 32 of the 2018 run of the Holland and Holland chronometer. Holland and Holland, as you might know, is one of London's best, one of the most important traditional rifle makers, gun makers in the British tradition. And they were once owned by Chanel. They were once owned by the Wertheimer brothers, who are watch guys, who are watch enthusiasts, important collectors themselves, and also associates with François Paul Journe. And apparently, the idea for this particular watch emerged in a visit that François Paul Journe made to the New York showroom of Holland and Holland when they were still owned by the Wertheimers. Nowadays, they're operated by the Italian company Beretta. And he has also decided to use Damascus steel, which was actually made from the barrels of two antique Holland and Holland guns, which makes the dials of each of these pieces unique in their own right. As stainless steel chronomètres souverains, they also happen to be quite rare in that regard as well, in 39 millimeter cases, so more akin in their proportions to chronomètre bleu than chronomètre souverain. And also in terms of the minimalist layout of the dial, these actually dispense with not only the power reserve indicator, but also the small seconds on the subsidiary dial. So you have a perfect two-hander time-only watch. And the Holland and Holland signature is actually, pardon me, engraved on the base plate as well, in the barley corn decorated parts. A very striking watch that was only made in two runs of 38 pieces in 2017 and 2018. Again, one of my absolute favorites. This was lot number 13, which sold for more than 182,000 in US dollars. Please hit the like button, by the way. It really, really helps. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for going through the journey with me. I also appreciate your support earlier today, where you made a really strong showing for me in terms of the numbers, in terms of super chats, which were really appreciated. With my conversation on Kazuchi und Söhne, when I hosted the CEO Robert Ponkenhofer. That was a great pleasure. Coming back to the Art of F.P. Journe auction that was concluded today at Christie's Geneva. At lot number 14, we have the Chronomètre Souverain that was released in a limited run for the 10th boutique that was opened worldwide for F.P. Journe in Dubai. That was back in 2019. And this piece was one of only 99 examples made in platinum. I'm not gonna use any harsh statements. Let's just say it's really not my taste. I feel like they could have found a better shade of green. But anyway, more power to Siddiqui and Sons, which operates that particular boutique. This is the limited edition for the Dubai boutique, one of 99 pieces. An example of the platinum Chronomètre Souverain at lot 14. Earlier today, this piece sold for more than 203,000 US dollars. Hi, Stiefel. Nice to see you, man. Of course, of course. Take care and enjoy. You gotta let go, man, for your own peace. You gotta let go of this Grand Seiko hate. Love is love, man. Let people fanboy for their favorite brands. Leave people in peace. Lot number 15 is a limited series of the Octa Lune with a beautiful matte blue dial. This was a piece that was actually released to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and France. It was made in only 10 pieces, one example for each of the 10 boutiques. As you guys know, F.P. Journe is on the eve of opening its 11th boutique, and that's going to be in London. But there are 10 boutiques so far in the entire world. But apparently, In addition to those 10 pieces, one for each boutique, this France-China 50 version was also available by special request at that time for a small window. But overall, not many examples were made. This is certainly one of them. Oversized dates, power reserve indicator, and a moon phase indicator. The particular symbol of the limited edition of the France-Chine 50th year, 50 years of diplomatic relations is right next to the signature of the brand. Lot number 15 sold at Christie's Geneva for the Art of F.P. Journe auction for more than 154,000 in US dollars. At lot 16, we have another Octalune, this time an earlier version from 2003 in a 38 millimeter 18 karat pink gold case with a pink dial and brass movement, rhodium plated, as you can see, and matched with a full 22 karat gold rotor weight that's placed off center and guilloche decorated. A brass movement 2003 Octalune in a 38 millimeter 18 karat pink gold case. 38 millimeter was predominantly the size at the time for F.P. Journe watches. Pardon me. This particular piece at the final hammer realized a price in excess of 140,000 in US dollars. Hey JB, how are you doing, man? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to see you as always. I made a small adjustment to the microphone, so let me know whether you still hear me well or if it's too low. Sometimes I'm afraid to raise it too much. We have already covered number 17. This was the centigraph in the classic 40 millimeter case, centigraph Souverain with the pink dial that sold for almost $225,000. Number 18 is the third series of resonance with the RT movement. So as you can see, It comes in a 40 millimeter case with the salmon dial, and the symmetry of the two dials is no longer preserved. There is more of a distinction between the two. On the right-hand side, you have the usual 12-hour dial, which is indicated with the two hands and supplemented by a subsidiary seconds dial at 6 o'clock. And on the left-hand side, you actually have a digital expression of the hour and minutes in the form of these sliding scales that are stacked upon each other in this fan-like fashion. And of course, there's also a subsidiary seconds dial that complements what is now a smaller 24-hour dial. Again, the design of the movements that reflects the symmetry of the face of the watch, that reflects the balance, in this case, I should say, of the dial side of the watch, is, I think, very impressive. The principle of resonance, very easily explained, is achieved by placing in close proximity the two movements with two separate gear trains and two escapements, where one begins to compensate for the other, right? Where they basically synchronize by sharing the possible errors, losses of time, or gains of time, and so forth. And that's what you see here. So there are basically two movements in a single watch, both movements having their separate gear trains, and of course the ability to adjust them separately, which has always been kind of the secret charm of this watch, the ability to use it as a dual time piece. That was lot number 18 for a third generation chronomètre résonance 40 millimeter 18 karat pink gold case with a 24-hour dial, in addition to the 12-hour one with the hour and minute hand. At the final hammer, this particular example realized a price in excess of $238,000. Modern mastery of art, design, and engineering, and of course, materials. Thank you, JB. At lot number 19, we have a very rare stainless steel example of the chronomètre Souverain that was made in a limited run of 38 pieces. In 2015, F.P. Journe made a 38 millimeter stainless steel set of 5 watches to appeal specifically to the true collectors, with each potential buyer personally vetted apparently by none other than François-Paul Journe himself. Number 28 of only 38 pieces. This stainless steel set also basically was the final hurrah for the 38 millimeter case size. So it is a very interesting crossroads with a bronze center dial. Interesting combination of stainless steel case and the pink gold dial. A pink gold movement, I should say. This is number 19, which sold earlier today for almost 120,000 in US dollars. I want to share the link in the chat if you want me to pay particular attention or skip ahead to one of the lots. This is number 20, which comes from that steel set. This is number 24 of that 38 piece stainless steel set of the chronomètre résonance. In the 38 millimeter stainless steel case, gold dial with a certain bronze patina matched with a stainless steel déployant clasp. And again, as a special moment for this limited edition, the chronomètre résonance returned to the 2 symmetric 12-hour dials, which is how this model was first made from 2000 to 2009. The limited 38-piece stainless steel editions were released in 2015. Again, and a very beautiful and exclusive example, an interesting combination of a stainless steel frame and a pink gold movement, seemingly contradictory, but still works quite well. This is lot number 20, which sold earlier today for more than 280,000 in US dollars. Lot 21 is the Octa Calendrier from the Boutique collection. This unique combination of 18 karat pink gold cases with the black dials, 38 millimeter dial, 38 millimeter case. octa calendrier is F.P. Journe's execution of the annual calendar with a retrograde date hand. It's a self-winding piece. Beautiful from the back and from the front. I particularly like the gilt accents on the dial in the signature, first of all, but also in the gilt finish that distinguishes the retrograde hour hand. This is lot 21. Which sold for more than $250,000 in USD. Number 22 is once again a special boutique edition of the Chronomètre Résonance with the third series, from the third series. The two symmetric dials, but dedicated at this time to 12 and 24 hours subsequently. Black dial with pink gold accents, which is in this case reserved for both the inscriptions and the power reserve indicator. Heat blued stainless steel hands for both the 24-hour and 12-hour dials, pardon me, respectively. One of only 5 of these pieces made in 2019. Lot 22 sold for more than 378,000 in US dollars. Lot number 23 is an early version of the Octa Réserve de Marche with a brass movement from 2003. This is basically the simplest and purest version of the self-winding F.P. Journe. Of course, a very early iteration, so it's not by any means a bargain, but a very striking watch, beautiful in its simplicity, off-center dial, oversized dates, and power reserve indicator in a 38 millimeter platinum case, a white gold dial in a shade of gray, and a rhodium plated brass movement that is matched with an off-center placed 22 karat gold rotor, which is also guilloche decorated. Lot 23 was an Octa Réserve de Marche with a brass movement from 2008, 38 millimeters in platinum. This piece sold for more than 126,000 in US dollars. At number 24, we have one of the elusive examples of the ruthenium series. This is a model that was only made in the ruthenium series, Octa Jour Nuit. The ruthenium series was a way of marking the transition for François-Paul Journe from rhodium plated brass movements to 18 karat pink gold movements. As part of this transition, he made 99 pieces of 5 different models, namely the chronomètre à résonance, tourbillon souverain, octa calendrier, and octa chronograph. The octa jour nuit was only produced for the ruthenium collection. These pieces have ruthenium plated dials and ruthenium dials and ruthenium plated movements. In this particular case, as you can see, the piece actually has a white gold, 22 karat white gold, guilloche decorated, off-center placed rotor weight as well. And there is this sort of fan-like aperture, which serves as a day and night indicator. The entire piece is a beautiful exhibition of various shades of gray between the exquisitely mirror polished platinum case and the ruthenium dial, and the silvered guilloche off-center dial for the hours, minutes, and seconds. You also get the oversized date indicator, which has a very integrated look because of the matched silver background for the date wheels. Beautiful looking watch, which has just enough blue on it. This was lot 24, one of only 99 pieces of the Octa Jour Nuit from the ruthenium series. Lot number 24. The ruthenium series was also a way of introducing 40 millimeter cases, right? At that time, the other contemporary Journe watches was 38 millimeters. The ruthenium series came in 40 millimeter cases. So this is a 40 millimeter platinum watch, which sold earlier today for more than 154,000 in US dollars. Thank you, JB. Could you highlight the results of lot 2026? I am really a fan of the colorful GMT. I think I know exactly what you are talking about, JB. Thank you for the $9.99. Of course, we're talking about the Octa UTC. This was François-Paul Journe's take on the dual time watch, on the GMT watch, in a 38 millimeter platinum case with a gray dial matched with a platinum buckle one of only 10 pieces made in 38 millimeters. The Octa UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, was only produced between 2011 to 2018 and offers a unique take on the dual time zone watch because it replaces GMT with the Atomic International Time. The local time is given by the heat-blued hands on the 12-hour dial. There's a gilt hand that indicates the home time on a 24-hour chapter that is expressed within that same dial, right? Same off-center dial. As you can see, the dates, in fact, are also written, also printed with blue. So this adds to the accents on this watch. This adds to the panoply of colors on the face of this watch. There's a painted globe at around 8 o'clock. I think it's a sapphire disc, which you can actually adjust by pushing a small secured pusher in the band on the right flank of the watch at 4 o'clock. And the home time zone ends up being positioned at 0 for the winter time hours, and the +1 and -1 are supposed to accommodate for summer hours, daylight savings time, so on and so forth. So this was for the very rare 38 millimeter platinum Octa UTC from 2015 for a model that is no longer produced at lot 26. This particular piece was sold for more than 140,000 US dollars. Very, very beautiful indeed. In a way, more discreet and classically elegant on the back than it is on the dial, but the dial side is so much fun as well. I completely agree. Again, the 24-hour hand, the gilt hand, is your reference time, is your home time, so to speak, which corresponds to the globe. So when you're cycling through the locations of the globe on the sapphire disk, you keep jumping the gilt 24-hour hand as well. That was lot 26 for the now discontinued and exceedingly rare 38 millimeter platinum Octa UTC. I mean, not to get confused, the entire line is discontinued, but the 38 millimeter platinum case is even more rare. Lot 25 was something that we skipped. We were just talking about the Ruthenium series, which was a run of 99 pieces of 5 different models. Octa Calendrier was one of them. This is number 80 of 99, introducing the 40 millimeter platinum case for F.P. Journe's self-winding annual calendar with the retrograde date. The dials of these series are ruthenium, with the backgrounds of the wheels for days and dates and other indicators matched with a shade of gray. And the brass movements are actually ennobled, so to speak, by being rhodium plated rather than, sorry, ruthenium plated rather than being rhodium plated. From 2004, number 80 at lot 25. This example of the Octa Calendrier from the Ruthenium series was sold for every time I open the windows. So this example of the Octa Calendrier from the Ruthenium series at lot 25 sold for more than 196,000 US dollars. Number 27. Number 27 is another example of a limited edition that was made for Sincere Fine Watches, which is a Singaporean retailer of a lot of interesting brands, in addition to very high elite luxury brands. Sincere Fine Watches are also heavily invested in independent high horological brands as well. This was a run which was made in, I believe, 15 examples, and it is offered in a 38 millimeter case and exclusively fitted with a black mother of pearl dial for this limited edition. We have otherwise an example of the Octa Calendrier in platinum with a pink gold dial, sorry, with a pink gold movement that's matched with a pink gold rotor weight, and again a black mother of pearl dial, which adds a unique rainbow effect to the dial. Annual calendar with the retrograde date hand. This was lot 27, which sold for the princely sum of $434,628. We have actually started the coverage with lot number 28 because my friend I Heart Maldives, who has basically sponsored this entire broadcast, alerted me to an example from 2016, which had sold for a fraction of this price, namely for around 150,000, basically. And today, this exclusive and rare platinum example of the Tourbillon Souverain on a matched 5-row bracelet and a rare jade dial. This is a tourbillon with remontoir d'égalité and true seconds, deadbeat seconds, jumping seconds, whatever you want to call it. And on May 12th, as part of the Art of F.P. Journe auction, this piece actually sold for 1,261,824 US dollars. From 150 to 1.25 million in about 6 years. It's fascinating, mind-blowing. Lot number 29 is an Octasport aluminum. This is actually a piece that is largely executed in platinum, in aluminum. I don't know. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Even the dial is out of an aluminum alloy and sapphire. The case is 42 millimeters. The movement also fashioned out of an aluminum alloy, which makes the watch basically painfully lightweight, light as feather. I think the entire watch weighs around 70 grams, maybe a little less. And it is also made, it's also presented on a matching bracelet. With these rubber inserts. This is lot 29 of the Octasport in aluminum, 42 millimeter case, aluminum alloy bracelets, aluminum dial, aluminum alloy movement with titanium tungsten hybrid rotor weights. At lot 29, this particular piece sold for more than 77,000 in US dollars. At lot 20, we had a Centigraph Sport in aluminum, again, fashioned largely in aluminum with rubber inserts, with rubber accents, in the front and an aluminum dial with sapphire chronograph registers, and the hand-wound chronograph movements also fashioned largely from aluminum alloy. This is lot number 30. And sold for almost 190,000 in US dollars. Number 31 was a limited edition Centigraphe Souverain in a two-tone execution of titanium with 18 karat pink gold accents, one of only 10 and number 3 of 10 in this case. Pardon me. The case is highly polished and very beautiful indeed. And the pink gold accents for the crown and the pusher is beautifully balanced with the numerals, which are in this sort of burnt orange, and the gilt hands for the hours and minutes. The chronograph registers have a life of their own with their sapphire discs that provide uh, interesting snapshots of the chronograph movement, and their red accents that are complemented by the red hands too. This was again a two-tone execution of the centigraph in a 40 millimeter polished titanium case with 18 karat pink gold accents. This piece sold right above the upper ceiling of its pre-auction estimate. Altogether in excess of 280,000 US dollars. $232 was a formula edition of the Centigraphe Souverain um, with a platinum case matched with a 5-row platinum bracelet, a dial in Ferrari red, which is complemented by the red hands in the chronograph registers, and of course the yellow hands, which for the hour and minutes, which of course form part of the Ferrari logo. Here is a glimpse onto the caliber 1506, the hand-wound centigraph chronograph movement. That has a register which allows you to read down to 1/100th of a second. it's said that only 20 of these centigraph Souverain exist with this particular dial configuration that honors the team colors of Scuderia Ferrari. Again, a product of this friendship and collaboration between Jean Todt and François-Paul Journe. Since François-Paul Journe predicted the excess of demand for this particular piece, they could, at the time, only be ordered on matching platinum bracelets, which basically cost as much as the watch itself, at 55,000 Swiss francs. So you can say it was a good deal for this gentleman, or for the lady who is the new lucky owner of lot number 32, which actually sold for almost 590,000 in US dollars. Number 33 is an early brass movement example of the octa calendrier. Annual calendar with the retrograde date hand, which snaps back, snaps upwards at the beginning of the month, and which needs only a single adjustment at the end of the short month every year. In a 38 millimeter platinum case with a beautiful champagne tinted dial made out of yellow gold, matching platinum buckle, of course, and rhodium plated brass movements, which is matched with a 22 karat gold rotor weight that is guilloche decorated and placed off center for efficient winding. This early example of the octa calendrier with the brass movement sold today as part of the Art of F.P auction at Christie's Geneva, a historic event for almost $250,000, $238,345 for Journe's early example of an annual calendar with a retrograde date. Another fantastic early F.P. Journe piece right here. Again, my favorite model, perhaps one of my top 3 in F.P. Journe. You guys know how much I like the chronometre Holland and Holland, the stainless steel example of the chronometre Souverain with the Damascus steel dial fashioned out of antique gun barrels. You know how much I like the Biblos edition of the chronometre bleu with that special dial with the arabesque cutout that was made to honor the opening of the Journe boutique in Beirut. And part of the top 3 is the octa chronograph, which is before the centigraph, François-Paul Journe's stab at the concept with the flyback function. Here you have an example from 2003 with a pink gold dial that is matched with a 38 millimeter platinum case, oversized date, 60-minute totalizer at 9 o'clock, and a beautiful pink gold dial. The movement, caliber 1300, is fashioned out of brass here and rhodium plated, and it is matched with an off-center rotor weight in 22 karat gold that is in its turn guilloche decorated. This early example of the flyback chronograph by F.P. Journe from 2003 with the brass movements at lot 34 sold for more than $250,000 for $266,385 in US dollars. Lot 35 is the third generation early tourbillon Souverain, reference T, where you get this little peak on the dial. This is the piece that won the Aiguille d'Or in the GPHG in Geneva in 2004. It was also given the grand prize, Watch of the Year in Japan as well in the same year. Yellow gold dial in a 38 millimeter platinum case. Very rare model in this particular iteration, in this particular version, with the rhodium plated brass version of the movement of caliber 1498. This particular example of the third generation reference T tourbillon Souverain with the remontoir d'égalité from 2003 with the rhodium plated brass movements. Sold for more than 560,000 US dollars at lot 35. Again, one of the absolute highlights of the auction at lot 36 was an early example of a chronomètre à résonance from 2002. This is a model that is sometimes called pre-subscription, right? The numbered series of 20 were reserved for the subscription watches, but these kinds of chronometre résonance are perhaps as desirable or almost as desirable. This piece is from 2002 and therefore has, again, that iteration, that early iteration of the chronometre résonance movements. The reference R, 38 millimeter platinum case, rhodium plated brass movements, and that early hand finished version of the yellow gold dial, beautiful tints of champagne. This is lot 26 from 2002, an early example of platinum chronometre résonance with a hand-finished yellow gold dial and a brass movement that is rhodium plated. This piece at the final hammer earlier today realized price of $322,466 in US dollars. Lot 37 is, again, a very early example of the tourbillon souverain with the remontoir d'égalité. In a 38 millimeter platinum case with a matte pink gold dial. And a very theatrically installed half bridge, by the way, for the tourbillon, which for me is part of the visual delight in looking at this watch. And of course, the brass plated early rhodium movements, caliber 1498. This is Tourbillon Souverain, reference T, third generation from 2001, 38 millimeter platinum case, matte pink gold dial, and caliber 1498 out of brass with the rhodium plating. Lot number 37 sold for $855,459 in US dollars. Thanks to I Heart Maldives, I Love Maldives' insistence, I started today with reviewing the results from the Art of F.P. Journe auction that was organized by Christie's Geneva, which was a very important event, considering the magnitude, considering the dedication to a single independent watchmaker who is still very much alive and kicking. This is a pre-souscription example of the chronomètre à résonance, case number 40 from around 2000, the pre-subscription model in the strictest sense of the word. Pink dial in a 38 millimeter platinum case. So this is in fact part of that pre-souscription and pre-production watches, around 30 examples in total that actually preceded the numbered 1 to 20 souscription pieces. Lot 38 is therefore very beautiful, unique, and exceedingly rare example of the chronomètre à résonance, perhaps only matched by the 20 numbered, matched and exceeded by the 20 numbered souscription versions. Lot 38 accordingly sold for more than 1,531,000 in US dollars. Number 39 was the centerpiece of the auction, number 2 of the Tourbillon Souverain from around 1999. Number 2, which was apparently bought by the same person who placed the order for number 1 because he wanted to reserve it. He wanted to set it aside for a friend in addition to his own version. A very beautiful act of friendship. Amazing history. Very touching story that goes with this watch. Yellow gold hand finished dial. In a 38 millimeter platinum case. That striking half tourbillon bridge, the peak into the remontoir, beautifully carved number in the series on the dial. Again, the finishing on the dial really makes a difference. Those manual touches really bring out a variety of details. And here is the caliber 1498 in its brass rhodium plated version. The absolute highlight of the auction, as mentioned previously, the centerpiece sold for more than 3 million in US dollars. The official number is close to 3,012,133 in USD. Number 40. Oh, sorry. Number 40 brings us back to the pencil drawing of this number 2, Souscription Tourbillon Souverain, which was made this year by Tamas Feha, and it was revealed at the last moment almost for the auction as lot number 0, having been added to the 39 watches. It was presented with an estimate of 5 to 10,000 Swiss francs, but earlier today it sold actually for more than $18,226. All right, as I will leave this on the screen as I take a short break, and then I will transition to my coverage of important watches from Christie's Hong Kong that is going to take place at the end of the month. I'll be right back. All right, we are back. I'm going to try to cover what I had from the important watches, unless actually, if someone, I can delay that to another episode. So if someone would like to jump on board for a more freewheeling discussion, or if you have any special requests, I'm more than happy to oblige. There's still more than 2 weeks to go. Well, exactly 2 weeks to go until that auction. And I have already covered most of the watches there. And since we have dedicated most of today auction results, we can cover some of the other auction results if that's what you would like to. Ultimately, please hit the like button for a little bit of support, a little bit of a boost for this channel, for this live stream. What do you think? What do you think? Feel free to write in the chat. If nothing else, I can call it a night early as well. I don't mind that. After all, I have had my live stream earlier today as well with Robert Ponkenhofer, the CEO of the emergent Austrian brand Karlsruhe und Söhne. We had a chance to discuss the unique offering that Karlsruhe brings to the table, um, more broadly on aesthetics and horology, as well as, of course, their specific model lines, the Waltz and Belvedere. So if you would like to check it out, it is in the chat. If you would like to support the channel, feel free to click any of the links that are provided in the video description and that are now in the crawling ticker. I'm going to post and pin them in the chat too. And if you have any further requests, I'll be here until 11, just chilling. And if you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat, preferably with a super chat, and I will get back to you before I close tonight. I can do that actually. In closing, I'll talk about what I posted actually earlier today, and it was really a way of honoring F.P. Journe, because after all, Breguet is one of his idols, one of his ancestors, so to speak. And this is a pocket watch that is itself an ancestor, that is a predecessor to François Paul Journe's chronomètre à résonance. This is a pocket watch that is more than 63 millimeters in diameter. So it is an important achievement of minimally miniaturization, as François Paul Journe has made, according to the same principle, a wristwatch that was initially 38 millimeters. Of course, chronometre resonance models now are 40, and that was less than 9 millimeters thick. I think it was 8.8. Breguet studied the phenomenon of resonance, first of all in clocks, and discovered in his production that using two pendulums would effectively share the errors and compensate accordingly. He implemented the same principle in pocket watches by placing in close proximity two movements with two separate gear trains and two escapements where one would compensate for the other. What you see in this picture on my Instagram is a very special watch. It is number is number 28, 2788, montre à deux mouvements, one of the few Breguet pocket watches built on the principle of resonance. The production of the watch began in 1812 and it was sold, I believe, in 1815 to the Prince Regent, who later became King outright, King George IV. Each movement has its dedicated seconds hand and, of course, a separate dial for hour and minutes, as you can see, which are distinguished by the use of Arabic numerals on the left, the Breguet numerals, as one says these days, and Roman numerals on the right. The hands are naturally in the house style, i.e., pomme, that is to say, apple shaped, in the style that we simply call Breguet. You have heat blued hands for hour and minutes on the left dial with the Arabic numerals, and gilt hands for the dial on the right hand side, which has the Roman numerals. That dial on the right hand side has a subsidiary dial for seconds integrated, situated at 6 o'clock, whereas the movement on the left, meaning the movement on the right, meaning the dial on the left, actually incorporates the sweep center seconds, which is a beautiful design. Both the dial and the case of the watch is exquisitely decorated by hand guilloche in the stately style associated with Breguet. As you can see, it's not only the case back, but the entire case band that has the guilloche decoration. The inside of the cuvette is engraved with an equation table. This is actually a watch that is wound by keys, 2 keys for the 2 separate movements. This is the case back that has the mesmerizing barleycorn guilloche decoration. And you can see 2 movements in close quarters within that 63 millimeter pocket watch case. Incidentally, number 2788 was one of the 2 pocket watches with unusual and complicated movements that George Daniels covered in his monumental tome, The Art of Breguet, pages 75 to 77. He talks about this particular watch on page 76, and it is pictured on page 226. Since Breguet's resonance pieces were pocket watches that were at least 63 millimeters in diameter, it was quite a feat when Journe implemented the phenomenon of resonance for watches that could be worn on the wrist, with a case that is 38 millimeters in diameter and less than 9 millimeters thick. Now, going back to the results, Christie's declares the first ever dedicated auction for a living independent watchmaker, the Art of F.P. Journe, was 100% sold at Christie's Geneva today, realizing 13,665,300 in Swiss francs, which is more than 14 million in US dollars, approximately 350,000 Swiss francs per watch. Clients from 20 countries across 4 continents participated in the sale. 52% of the watches were bought by clients from Europe and the Middle East. The Americas accounted for 28% of the sales. uh, Asia and Pacific region 20%, and 29% of all buyers and bidders were millennials, which is, I think, very important for the brand equity and the future of the value of FP Journe watches. Almost a third of the collectors who have somehow participated in this landmark sale are millennials, which, barring extraordinary circumstances, really promises a couple more decades to come of healthy growth in the market of François Paul Journe, FP Journe's watches. And yeah, he jokingly said once that buy my watches while I'm still alive, with that self deprecating French sense of humor. But he was sharing a certain grain of truth. The top selling lot was lot number 39, number 2 of the Tourbillon Souverain Souscription, made roughly around 1999. It was sold for more than $3 million. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support and presence. Please don't forget to hit the like button. If you want to support this channel, if you want to sustain the growth of this channel with your contributions, you know how. The links are there in the chat. They're included in the video description, and they are now crawling in the rolling ticker. If you join me on Patreon, there are incredible perks. I send you on a daily basis at least 3 direct links to watch deals online, and these actually arrive in your mailbox with an exclusive recording where I go through each and every one of my choices. And since I curate these options, since I group them um, around a particular theme, dedicated to a specific brand, or perhaps chosen by complication, those recordings end up being quite an educational and informative journey. So it is a great way of keeping the pulse of the secondary market on watches. It is also a great way of learning more about watches that may be off the radar for the most part. It is also a great way of pursuing the kinds of watches that you aspire to and that you would like to buy even in the near future, because you will have a direct line of contact with me through Patreon, and I will be more than happy to consult you and even help you source what you would like. And I also offer other services on Patreon in addition to this primary tier, the inner circle tier, where I can actually help you build your watch collection either from scratch, or help you start moving pieces around, reconfiguring in a serious way, and perhaps finding a new direction in this beautiful passion of ours for wristwatches. Tomorrow, I will have a very special guest on my live stream. We're going to start a little bit early, 7 p.m. my time, 10 p.m. East Coast. The captain is going to do a special unboxing. I'm going to do a community post here, and post it on the story on Instagram as well, right after I set it up. I look forward to seeing you then. Please hit the like button on the way out. I really appreciate you. Stay strong, stay healthy, wear your watches and enjoy them. Until next time, I bid you adieu. Thank you, JB, for the super chats. And I love Maldives for your generous contribution. I'll see you all soon.